Okay, here we go. Recording. And so end of unit 2, lesson 13. So gain information from multiple texts. Continue to build on that idea of looking at different types of text and from different angles. So this time, it's going to be similar text and similar genres, but we're going to get back into synthesizing and drawing conclusions and stuff like that. So as the lesson says, by the time you complete this lesson today, you will be able to synthesize information from multiple texts, draw conclusions based on information from multiple sources, and apply information to new situations. Let's see what our audio says.
When you use more than one text to obtain information, you most likely synthesize, draw conclusions, and apply information to new situations. As you recall from Unit 1, synthesizing means combining information to reach a new idea. Drawing conclusions means making a larger inference based on multiple inferences. Applying information to new situation means taking what you learn from a text and using that knowledge to understand a similar situation or to make predictions.
Yeah, and that's what synthesizing, synthesis is just taking information that you obtain from different sources and utilizing that, to draw conclusions, make new inferences, and apply it in new ways. And we did this with, single text earlier on. We've seen that word before. We've done some synthesis, but now it's just applying to multiple texts. That's the only difference, really. And same idea. We've talked about drawing conclusions and making inferences and things like that. So largely, it's just doing this between. And I think it's actually easier when you actually look at two pieces of information, two pieces of text to synthesize and draw conclusions. And so here we got talking about football. Two small ideas here. Let's take a look. So making football safer. Our first little passage here says observers have proposed a variety of changes that could diminish the number of head injuries and long-term brain conditions suffered by football players. In his 10-point plan to save football, Christopher Nowinski notes that half of the hits to the head take place in practice during dangerous drills, and he proposes making practices safer by eliminating contact drills. Nowinski also recommends that the NFL reevaluate techniques of tackling and blocking and rules governing the game. And that's from the Facts on File News Services Issues and Controversies online article, NFL Head Injuries from 2013. And our second passage, so it says below are 10 paths to a safer game. We get the first safer game to reduce brain trauma. We have the first 2 out of the 10. So reevaluate how the game is practiced. Greater than 50% of hits to the head occur outside of games. NFL teams rarely hit in practice due to risk of injury. Youth teams could only be allowed to have full contact once a week. And second, encourage mandatory brain trauma and concussion education for coaches, athletic trainers, parents, and athletes. Coaches, athletic trainers, and athletes cannot diagnose concussions if they aren't trained to look for them or know how to recognize them. They will not voluntarily choose to rest concussions and reduce overall brain trauma if they don't understand why it is good for the athlete's health. And that is from the sportslegacy.org letter, 10-point plan to save football by Christopher Nowinski. So he's referenced in the first little passage, and then we actually have him writing about head injury in the second one, in concussions. So our little text box says, notice that the formats of the text are different, right? We have the first article. The first is in an article. It comes from, that expository type of writing. And the second is a 10-point plan appearing as a list. And then second, it says, as you synthesize ideas between both texts, consider what the authors are not saying directly. use one text to read between the lines of the other, right? So that's making those inferences, reading between the lines. What can you draw from both of those that they're talking about? So let's see here. We're going to go on over to the quiz. Okay, start up our quiz. And this all, it's funny, you know, again, thinking about the times these were written, that was when that the controversy over head injury in the NFL was really coming to a climax there about, you know, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And they have actually instituted certain things in the game to prevent further injury, further brain injury. So using logic says the first text refers to NFL practices. The second text refers to youth team practices. To synthesize ideas, note how the information in the second text builds on that in the first, right? So it's actually, you know, the second text is what's basically getting referenced in the first. So overall, thinking about those two texts, what we can infer and draw conclusions about. So let's go on to our questions here. How about we start with Etta? Would you mind reading number 1 for us?
Okay. It says both texts indicate that youth team practices A are looser on safety regulations than even NFL team practices. B could require the presence of adults trained to deal with head injuries. C lower the incidence of brain trauma and concussions. D must now follow the same game rules as the NFL does. Is it B?
It's A. So the one thing to look at here, wow, my screen was going crazy there for a sec. So in that second passage, in number 1 there, talking about, you know, most of those hits come outside of games like at practice. He says NFL teams rarely hit in practice due to risk of injury. Youth teams could only be allowed to have full contact once a week. So that's implying that there is more full contact in those games, in youth football practices than there is in the NFL. And that means you can assume, right, that those are looser safety regulations in NFL practices. So 1 is A. 2, we got new passages about got a cat trying to be crazy here. So let's go to Grace. How about reading that first passage for us from that same article?
All right. Making football safer. Ira Carson, the former co-chair of the NFL Committee on Brain Injury, has suggested that if scientists were to prove that disorders such as CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy,
Encephalopathy, I think. Encephalopathy.
were directly related to football, the league would have to consider imposing a cap on the number of years players can compete in the NFL. Carson knows, however, that such limits were never imposed in boxing despite widespread brain damage in that sport. He asks rhetorically in the New Yorker, why would a boxer at the height of his career, 6 or 7 years in, stop fighting just when he's making $1 million paydays? Other experts have suggested providing players with better information about concussions. Journalist Jonathan Starkey writes in the Washington Post, the best defense against concussions might just be simple education and prevention. Players should not put such trust in their helmets that they use their heads as battering rams, for example. And if they feel abnormal after a big hit, they should resist the urge to shake it off and keep playing. from the Factors of Foul News Services, Issues and Controversies online article, NFL Head Injuries, Access 2013.
All right. And I'll take a look. I'll read through the rest of our list here. We get the other 7 points from that list, basically. So plan to save football. We have reevaluate protective equipment, investigate changes to helmets, shoulder pads, and other equipment to reduce brain trauma, develop better methods of concussion detection and diagnosis. The CDC provides clipboards with concussions diagnosis protocols on the back at no cost. Coaches could be required to carry them. We can invest more in research to find simple, objective ways to diagnose concussion. Develop better methods of concussion management. Return to play too soon after a concussion can result in more extensive brain damage and can actually result in death. It is now law in Washington State that players are required to see a medical professional with brain trauma expertise before return to play. Minimum return to play standards should be enforced at all levels. Consider minimal medical resources. Football is a dangerous game. Minimum medical resource standards, like having an athletic trainer or doctor on the sideline, should be considered. Reevaluate techniques of tackling and blocking. We can teach and enforce different methods of tackling and blocking that minimize contact to the head. Reevaluate the rules. Recently, the NFL banned the wedge on kickoffs to reduce trauma. Many other rules could be changed. Reevaluate rule enforcement and the role of referees. The NCAA recently began suspending players for intentional helmet-to-helmet hits. Referees could eject players for illegal hits to the head. Referees could be trained to identify concussed players on the field. Reconsider the culture of the game. Television announcers could stop glorifying illegal hits. Children could stop being pressured to play through concussions. And once again, that's from sportslegacy.org letter, Point Plan to Save Football by Christopher Nowinski, 2009. So let's take a look here. We are on, this is number 2. Sasha Gay, would you read question 2 for us?
It says, according to both passages, why do football players often play despite head injuries? Players A, often do not care about their health. B, are afraid to seem weak in front of the public. C, feel pressured by the sports culture and do not want to hurt their careers or lose their play. D, know that by not following coaches' orders or NCAA rules, they will sit out other games. Is it C?
It is C. Yeah, so feeling pressure by the sports culture, I do not want to hurt their careers or lose their pay. So, we can get that, right? That's what we're doing here, is gaining that information from multiple texts, particularly at the end there, changing the culture of the game so children are stopped being pressured to play through concussions, right? And listed right there at the end. And then we also see it up here, players not put much trust in their helmets, changing the culture there, urge to shake it off and keep playing, as it says there right at the end. Okay, so C for 2 and 3 got our same passage. Nelda, would you like to read question 3? Nope, maybe not. Let's go back to Etta. How about we get you for number 3?
If the authors of these passages saw a young athlete suffer a head injury during a game, they most likely would A, insist that the athlete shake it off and return to the game. B, urge the athlete to stop playing and seek medical attention. C, help the athlete's coach diagnose and treat the injury. Or D, threaten to contact the media if the athlete continued to play. Is it B?
B, yeah, urge the athletes to stop playing and seek medical attention, right? They're definitely in agreement there. All right, so 3 is B as in boy, And we're gonna go back to Nilda now. She was on mute before, so she's gonna finish off here with number 4.
According to both passages, what do intentional helmet to helmet hits indicate about the sport? A, players must be large and powerful. B, regulations are ignored for the sake of the game. C, only references can call out players for such a behavior. D, players put too much stress in protecting equipment. B.
D is a
D.
dog. Yeah, so it mentions here, so it says something about protective equipment, investigate changes to helmet, shoulder pads, and others. Where does it say? Well, teaching different methods of tackling and blocking. And then of course at the end, glorifying illegal hits. And also here at the top, it says the best defense against concussions might just be simple education prevention. Players should not put such trust in their helmets that they use their heads as battering rams, for example. Right, so 4 there is D. Yeah, D is in dog. And that is the quiz part. Right. 1 was A. 2 was C. 3 was B as in boy. 4 D as in dog. All right. We'll move over to the workbook. And it says, as you read different passages about similar topics, you will synthesize information by combining ideas from each text into one unifying idea. Synthesizing reflects your understanding of the text and helps you gain new insights. Often, you also need to draw conclusions or broad inferences based on smaller inferences you make about the text. When you apply information to other situations, you also show a deeper understanding. For example, applying information based on the text may require you to predict what an author might do or feel in another situation. So yeah, and we, again, this is one of those things that we sort of do if you're researching something, whatever the topic might be, right? You may go to multiple texts. You may not rely just on one article or one online entry or something like that if you're learning about something. And that way you're synthesizing information. At one point, you might not even remember where all the information come from, but you have gained this new knowledge and you've put it all together. All right, and so we have 2 little passages here. Benefits of part-time job. Okay. So benefits of part-time jobs, the first passage. A part-time job shows prospective employers that you can take life seriously and be proactive. Employers may question gaps in a candidate's resume. Show employers that you're responsible by taking a part-time job to help pay bills while looking for permanent employment. That's from careerbuilder.com article, The Pros of Part-Time Jobs, Matthew Tarpey, 2012, Access 2013. And our second one is a job offer letter. And dear Mr. Osborne, at ABC Books, we feel that your skills and experience are an ideal fit for an editorial department. Therefore, we are pleased to offer you the part-time position of assistant editor on these terms. Your start date will be May 15th, and you will report to supervising editor Jim Mason. Initially, you will be paid an hourly rate of $12 on a biweekly basis. Direct deposit is available. As a part-time temporary employee, you will not be eligible for insurance benefits or paid vacation. And it says over here under the benefits of part-time jobs, the first text is an article explaining the benefits of taking a part-time job. The second is a job offer letter. As you read the letter, think how the first text might influence the recipient's decision. And so it says to synthesize ideas from both passages, Think of ways in which the idea in the first passage help explain why the job offer in the second passage is a good option. So, you're offered a part-time job. What's the benefits of that? Well, it prevents a gap in employment. You are making some money while you may find something else. Hopefully, you're working in your field. So things like that. And let's start up the workbook. Okay. And here about making assumptions. Before answering question 1, consider what you know about part-time jobs. Make an assumption about how the recipient of the letter most likely feels and what he would want, right? So we're thinking about the recipient of the letter here as we move into question 1. Question 1, let's go to Grace.
All right. According to the information to both passages, the recipient of the job offer will most likely accept a position because it's A, offers a good benefit package while he continues his job search. B, will help him gain experience in a new field so that he can build up his resume. C, will give him the chance to make up for the gaps in his resume that extended over a long period. D, offers the chance to continue working in his field while he searches for a permanent full-time position. D.
Right, D. Offers a chance to continue working in his field while searching for a permanent position. The first one, well, the part-time position doesn't have good benefits. Pays decent for 2013, if you're thinking that way, but no insurance, and it's part-time. Will help him gain experience in a new field. We don't know his field. So we're kind of, actually we do know his field because it says of his experience are an ideal fit for editorial. So we do know that he has experience. He's not necessarily gaining, working, you will gain additional experience, but it's not a new field. And then on C, it says we'll give him the chance to make up for the gaps in his resume that extend over long periods. We don't know, the letter doesn't address, it's like, yes, we see that you have an extended gap in your resume. There's nothing like that. So that leaves D, right? Comparing the two, what the article says about the benefits of a part-time job falls into the realm with the other one here that we can draw that conclusion. So we have 2 new passages. We're going to have a drag and drop activity at the bottom. How about Sasha Gay? Will you read our first passage there?
Benefits of part-time jobs. When researching part-time positions, look for ones that would give you experience in your desired field and possibly introduce you to professional contacts that may be useful down the road. For many employers, a candidate's prior experience is an important factor, and professional referrals remain one of the most trusted and widely used methods among hiring managers for filling vacancies. A part-time job in a related field is often more beneficial than a full-time position in an unrelated one. Even if your part-time job isn't in your desired field, it is still a good way to round out your resume as well as prove you're a driven self-starter. It may also lead to letters of recommendation, which will be invaluable. Taking a part-time job will also help in your quest to find sustainable employment in less direct ways, such as improving your time management with nothing to do each day but fill out the odd job application and make a phone call or 2. It's easy for an employed job seeker to get distracted and disorganized. A part-time job can help prepare you for a full-time schedule. A part-time job makes a great transition into the daily workforce. So with so while so while it may not be what you originally wanted, any chance to put yourself to work, fill resume gaps, and build experience should be an opportunity. From the careerbuilder.com.
Okay, yeah, it's from our same, yeah, that's again our same, another part of the article on pros of part-time jobs. And I'll read our offer letter here. This is continuing with this one we were looking at just a second ago here. So it says, while employed at ABC Books, you may engage in other employment as long as it does not compete with or create a conflict of interest with ABC Books. We ask you to sign a non-compete agreement upon hiring. Your employment with ABC Books is at will. Therefore, you or the company may terminate your employment at any time and for any reason. Although your job title, duties, and compensation are subject to change, the at-will nature of your employment is not. Although we cannot offer you now the full-time permanent position you seek, we hope that accepting our offer will allow you to continue working in your field of interest. We believe that you will be an asset to our editorial team as you expand your knowledge, skills, and experience. We hope that you accept our offer. If you do, please sign the enclosed forms and return them to me. Please let me know if you need additional information. Sincerely, Michaela Ealing, Director, Human Resources, ABC Books. All right, and our drag and drop here. So our little table, we have two columns, pros and cons. So we're going to drag and drop our pros and cons here. Start with no paid vacation. Is that a pro or a con?
Con.
Con, yeah. No insurance benefits.
Con.
Yeah, who wants insurance? Low pay.
Con.
This one's pretty easy, and that leaves three for us, right? So letters to recommendation letters, right? That's a pro. Experience in a desired field, and acquisition of professional contacts. So that's pretty straightforward, you know, unless you're really into low pay, no benefits, and no vacation time. Okay, so we'll submit there. Everything lights up. All right. And moving along. So more, okay, now we're concerned about food labels. Let's see here. Nilda, would you read our first passage on food labels?
Number one.
Number 3. Yeah, the first passage though, concerns about food labels.
Okay. If you're like many consumers, you probably like little time to read food labels carefully. Yet even if you do read them, you may find them confusing. You are not alone. Sometimes it seems as that labels are meant to confuse consumers. For example, manufacturers use boldface type of highlight certain words on food packages. Words that grab your attention and appeal to your desire to be healthy. Sometimes the labels are helpful, other times they are not. However, you should be aware that words such as natural, multigrain, and organic are often misleading or false, encouraging consumers to believe that a product is a healthier choice than it actually is. Number 2 now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Consider that the term organic, just because something is organic is not necessarily helpful. A granola bar made of organic ingredients may still be loaded with sugar, fat, and calories. Consumers should read the entire label before buying such a product. 3. Natural is another misleading term. It is neither defined legally nor regulated in most foods. Natural does not always mean healthful. For example, many sugars occur in nature, so a food containing corn syrup can be considered natural, Also, foods labeled as natural may contain preservatives that are unhealthful, healthful, even when the main ingredient is indeed natural and healthful by itself. Consider, for example, the added sodium in pork or chicken. Food added dyes make food more appealing and healthful looking, as is often the case with dark bread like rye and pumpernickel. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, you got it.
Multigrain is yet another term used liberally. All that the label makes the product seem nutritious. Most multigrain bread and crackers consist mainly of refined flour, which has been depleted of the most nutritious properties of the whole grain. And what you want are whole grains. Therefore, unless the first ingredient on the label is 100% whole grain, the product is likely to contain refined grain and possibly sugar and chemicals. You can avoid these problems by preparing your own food with raw whole grains, such as wild rice, barley, oats, and corn. Or you can read labels carefully and understanding what they mean, in addition to what they say.
All right. And so our second one here, looking at whole grain labels. So now we have more of a list style. Well, no, I think it is just expository again. So the Whole Grains Council has created an official packaging symbol called the whole grain stamp that helps consumer find real whole grain products. Many whole grain products not yet using the stamp will list the grams of whole grain somewhere on the package or say something like 100% whole wheat. You can trust these statements, but be skeptical if you see the words whole grain without more details, such as crackers made with whole grain. The product may contain only minuscule amounts of whole grains. From the wholegraincouncil.org article identifying whole grain products. And then our table here, column, words you may see on packages, and then what they mean. So whole grain, the name of the grain, whole wheat, whole, stone ground, whole, name of the grain, brown rice, oats, oatmeal, including old fashioned, oatmeal, instant oatmeal, wheat berries, wheat or wheat flour, semolina, durum wheat, organic flour, stone ground, multigrain, may describe several whole grains or several refined grains, enriched flour, degerminated or cornmeal bran, wheat germ. And it's very light, but they're sectioned here. So there's a little in the background, there's a little bit of a light gray color. So that first section there from whole grain down to wheat berry. And when it says what they mean, so yes, contains all parts of the grain. So you're getting all the nutrition or all the nutrients of the whole grain. So if a package says whole grain, whole wheat, whole, stone ground, brown rice, oats, oatmeal, wheat berries, all that's going to have all the components of a whole grain. Second little box goes from wheat or wheat flour to multigrain, and it says maybe. So these are accurate descriptions of the package contents, but because some parts of the grain may be missing, you're likely missing the benefits of whole grains. When in doubt, don't trust these words. So organic flour, semolina, wheat or wheat flour. So those words, maybe, no. That bottom little layer there, degerminated, well, no, enriched flour down to wheat germ. No, these words never describe whole grains. Bran, wheat germ, degerminated, or enriched flour. So let's take a look here. Number 3. How about Etta? Would you read number 3 for us?
Okay. On the basis of the information in both passages, which food will contain the most nutrients? A, cornbread, B, organic chips, C, wild rice, or D, crackers? C.
Yeah, wild rice, right? That's gonna give you the most nutrients. When you go to Chipotle, always get the brown rice.
Yeah.
Just more dense. So 3 is C. Same passages here for number 4. Grace, you want to read question 4?
All right. Which purpose do the article and table serve? A. To persuade readers to grow some of their own food and buy organic products. B. To inform readers of the truth about food labels and how to read them properly. C. To entertain readers with anecdotes about hurtful foods and misleading food labels. D. To demonstrate how natural whole foods are better than processed refined foods. B.
Yes, B, right? Just it's informational. So if we were looking for our purpose there, like we've done before, right? It's just good information between the table and our expository passage, right? So, the other ones, it's not really persuading us. It's not really giving us, if we wanted to add something about, it's good for your heart or it's good for, prevents cancer, things like that. Whole wheat's a great source of, nutrients, that would be more of a persuasive argument included to entertain. I mean, if grains are your thing, if that's your jam, maybe that entertains you, but it's definitely for information here. And then to demonstrate how natural whole foods are better than processed, it doesn't really get into that, right? It's just saying what the difference is. So that leaves B there for us for number 4. 5. How about Sasha Gay? Read question 5.
Both passages indicate that food labels, A, are often misleading, confusing, and unreliable. B, are tightly regulated by state and federal laws. C, tell consumers what they need to know, but most people ignore them. D, provide accurate information, but most people do not understand them. Is it A?
Yeah, A, right? The article states that, there's misleading information on labels. And then the second passage there with the table indicates that as well. Just because something says something on a package, what does it actually mean? What to look out for? 5 is A. 6, we're still going to stick with whole grains here. Nilda, would you read question 6?
Yes, in which way is the information in the article similar to the information in the table? A, both dismiss the skepticism that consumers feel about food labels. B, both emphasize that the whole grain stamp helps consumers find whole grain products. C, both explain the real meanings of terms used in food labels. D, both explain how natural grain products are better than multigrain products. B.
C is in cat here. So they both give us, explain real meanings of terms used in food labels there. We look up, it talks about multigrain, natural, and organic are misleading. Natural has no, agreed upon, solid set in stone meaning or definition, and multigrain is also a term that's used very liberally. And then we get them broken down here at the table. 6 is C as in cat. 7, more multigrains, more whole grains. 7, let's go back to Etta. Question 7.
Okay. On the basis of the information in this article and table, which item is the most healthful purchase? A package of dark rye rolls. B, a loaf of organic whole grain bread. C, a bag of pancake mix with enriched flour. Or D, a box of low-fat wheat germ cereal. Would it be the B?
Yep, B is in boy. And this is, how you would use information like that, right? This is synthesis right here. You could use those, what do you find on the label from the expository passage at the beginning, how things can be misleading. And the table is additional information. So if I was going to the grocery store, I was in Kroger and I was looking at the bread aisle, and you would come to the conclusion there that, okay, a loaf of organic whole grain bread is going to be better than any of those other options there. B as in boy. 8, continuing on with our same passages here. Grace, you want to read question 8 for us?
Okay. According to the article and the table, why are refined grains less healthful than whole grains? A, refined grains contain preservatives or other unnatural substances. B, refined grains may contain food dyes. C, refined grains have lost beneficial nutrients. And D, refined grains are made with corn syrup. A?
C.
C.
Yeah, refined grains. And that's, generally speaking, that's true. It's not necessarily that it's bad for you, but they have lost a lot of its nutrients in the processing of those, like flours and things. So 8 is C. C as in cat. 9. Let's go to Sasha Gay for question 9.
Which is the most likely conclusion to draw about the authors of the passages? The author of the first passage, A, writes for farmers growing organic wheat. The author of the second passage helped create the whole grain stamp. B is a nutritionist who knows about whole grain products. The author of the second passage is an organic farmer. C is a retailer promoting whole grain products. The author of the second passage always chooses nutritious food products. And D is a journalist writing about health issues. The author of the second passage most likely belongs to the Wheat Grain Council. Is it A?
It's D. Yeah. So, and this is where that sort of idea comes into play about looking at the sources and everything. So we don't have information as far as like a citation in the first passage, but we do for the second one. And what we can tell there, looking at the second one in particular, right, from the wholegraincouncil.org. So that's going to tip us off that, that writer, that author, that passage is likely belongs to the Whole Grain Council if they're writing for the website. And just based on the information in the first one, it's informational. And it would most likely be a journalist, somebody who's fairly objective in reporting this information, right? It's not a persuasive text. It's just informational. So that somebody is probably going to be a journalist. And because the other ones you might get into a situation, a nutritionist, yes, but probably not a farmer, when it comes to that, like option B there. So that leaves D as in dog for number 9. And Nilda, let's go to you for number 10.
Yes, the most logical conclusion to draw about much of the food industry is that it, A, is willing to use the deception to get people to buy food as not helpful. B, is tightly regulating areas other than labeling. C, has vested interest in consumers' health. D, disagrees with organic growers and whole food advocates about the whole grain stamp. A.
That's right. Hey, there's just a ton of deception in the food industry. If you go look, you've got a bottle of chocolate syrup in your house, it'll probably say low fat on it. Stuff like that. Hey, it's low fat. It's got 1 billion grams of sugar, but it's low fat. That's why I've been fat my whole life, because my mom was always deceived by packaging on labels. Oh, look, it's got real fruit juice and 100 grams of sugar, but it's got real fruit juice in it. Oh, gotta love moms. The 10, it was fun growing up in the 80s, because that's when, sugar just went, everything had sugar in it. 10 is A. 11, got our same passages here. Let's go back to Etta. How about reading number 11 for us?
Okay. On the basis of the information in both passages, the most nutritious breakfast dish would be A, bowl of bran flakes, B, a bowl of instant oatmeal, C, 2 slices of multigrain toast, or D, 2 slices of rye bread. It's B, a bowl of instant oatmeal.
Yeah, bowl of instant oatmeal. There you go. B as in boy there. And one final question for our workbook today. Let's go to Grace for number 12.
Okay. Which is the most logical conclusion to draw from reading this passage? A, reading food labels will tell you exactly what you are getting. B, labeling on a whole grains may be deceptive, but other food labeling is more accurate. C, food labels may not provide complete or accurate information. And D, natural and organic products are neither natural nor organic. C.
There you go. Yeah, food labels may not provide complete or accurate information. So you get the idea here. You guys did really well on this. Gain information from multiple texts. I can look at this. I can look at text A. I can look at text B, and I can start making decisions. And it's great. Great examples they used here. Especially in today's world here, that's very topical as far as like what we eat. And that's a very practical way that you would use a skill set like this, is when you look at labels. I've, had, nutrition class, and I did a diabetes prevention program, and we covered a lot of stuff like that. Of course, I choose to ignore it still today. But I do, know a lot about nutrition, even though I choose to ignore it most of the time. Do I need to follow up with anybody on our workbook as far as the answers there? Everybody get everything? All right. Well, we finished up so quick. I think we can take a break here. And before we get to the next lesson, it'll be a little longer. I think there's some longer passages involved, and we're kind of starting that new unit. But this will be a good place to take about 10 minutes, and we'll switch over. Like I said, if anybody missed it, I'm going to skip over the unit review for Unit 2. We just did the last lesson there. We'll start Unit 3 today, and then tomorrow we'll come back and hit the Unit 2 review, because it's going to be a doozy. It's like these dumb questions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here, so these recordings aren't like 2 hours long when I post them on Google Cloud.